Monday has been declared a day of mourning in Russia's Tatarstan Republic after a Boeing 737 jet crashed at Kazan airport, killing all 50 people on board. It had departed from Moscow and was attempting to land when the tragedy happened. Now, these are the pictures we've just gotten in from Kazan airport, where the jet crashed and caught fire, apparently during its second landing attempt. Now, there were 2 children among the 44 passengers, and 6 crew members also perished. So far, 10 of the victims have been identified. RT's Lucy Kafanoff can tell us more. Lucy, thank you very much for being with us here. Now, what can you tell us so far about what happened? How did this all unravel?
Well, certainly a fatal journey for all 50 people on board that flight. Flight 363, of course, operated by Tatarstan Airlines. The plane had taken off as normal from Domodedovo Airport right here in Moscow at about 6:20 p.m. Over an hour later, had crash landed at its destination, the Kazan International Airport. As you had mentioned, 44 passengers, 6 crew members, all confirmed dead. Exactly how the events unfolded are still a bit murky. We do know that the crew was reportedly trying to abort landing in order to make a second approach. The pilot had notified the control center about the problems, but as the plane tried to land, it exploded when it struck the runway. Unclear whether the explosion took place upon impact or beforehand. Now, we simply don't know the cause at this point. Investigators are looking at a large number of issues. There's some concerns that perhaps some problems with fuel might have been to blame. They're also looking at weather conditions, pilot error, as well as, of course, mechanical failure. Now, Tatarstan Airlines did release a statement saying that its pilots were experienced, although that doesn't rule out human error. We also know that there were strong wind gusts at the time, although, again, we don't know whether weather was the cause. What is clear, however, is the lack of survivors. The emergency rescue operations have wrapped up. There are no survivors, and of course, that airport will be closed until midday on Monday. That specific airplane, however, it wasn't its, even though it was its final journey. It wasn't its first. Earlier on Sunday, it had flown from Kazan to Moscow right here. We had spoken to one woman who was on that flight as she recounts her experience.
The flight itself went quite smoothly, but just before the landing, the plane started vibrating fiercely. Initially, I thought it was the weather, but when we got out of the plane, it turned out the weather was quite nice. The plane was shaking, it was dragged from side to side. We landed on our first attempt, but it was a really bad landing, and I felt like the plane was going to roll off the runway.
Now, Lucy, that was one particular passenger's experience on board the penultimate flight there. What about the actual airplane itself? What can you tell us about this particular plane?
Well, the plane itself has been operational for 23 years, the Boeing 737-500. It's been through a number of airline owners, and in fact, the Tatarstan Airlines was the 8th operator to have that specific plane in its fleet. Not necessarily a problem in itself, as long as it's maintained properly. The 737 also is the best-selling airline. It's hugely popular. There's, some 1,200 of them in the air at any given moment. Boeing, though, the maker, has responded to this tragedy. It said in its statement that it's actually sending a technical team of advisors to help Russia with that investigation, an investigation that's not only going to be hot in demand here, but also abroad. As we found out, a British national woman was on board that flight, one of the fatalities. Now, the tragedy does highlight what unfortunately is a poor safety record for the regional airlines that supply international routes across the largest nation in the world. Russia and the former Soviet republics combined in 2011 had an accident rate that's 3 times the world average. So this is certainly bound to increase the pressure on this investigation to really push authorities to get to the bottom of it, to figure out if this was an isolated incident or perhaps a trend. But of course, whatever they come up with, that's not going to bring back those 50 people who tragically perished on that flight. Sean, back to you.
RT's Lucy Kafanoff reporting for us there, and we know you're going to stay in touch and across the situation as it develops. Thanks for being with us. Now, we are also keeping track of everything that is happening in Kazan on our website, rt.com. We've got all of the updates from the moment the crash happened through till now. We've been getting the thoughts of aviation experts in Russia and abroad. Earlier, we spoke to Captain Mark Weiss, who is a civil aviation leader at the Spectrum Group and used to fly the same kind of airplane that has crashed in Kazan. He believes that it was a chain of events that led to this catastrophe.
That was a poor repair that led to fatigue and obviously catastrophic failure. But all of these factors are going to be looked at. Normally in an emergency, you want to get the aircraft on the ground safely as quickly as possible. So what would have caused the aircraft to not land on its first attempt? Was weather a factor? Was crew fatigue, crew illness? There are going to be so many things that are going to be looked at, keeping in mind that accidents generally don't happen from a single event. It's a chain of events that lead to a catastrophe like this.
Now, at this stage, a variety of factors could have been responsible for Sunday's crash. Let's look at what the key causes of air tragedies have been over the years. Now, we have a pie chart here that illustrates everything. Today's aircraft are incredibly sophisticated machines, but very sensitive as well to how they're being flown. More than half of air crashes are caused by errors made by the flight crew. Now, various technical problems with the aircraft are also responsible for just under a quarter of problems leading to accidents. Of course, bad weather conditions can play their part, and they are behind 12% of crashes, and you can see that little sliver in yellow right there. Finally, only 9% of air incidents are due to terrorist attacks or hijackings. These figures are from planecrashinfo.com. An analysis of the all-important flight voice and data recorders should provide vital information as to what happened during the flight. David Learmount, the operations and safety editor of Flight Global magazine, says that authorities will get clues to the reasons of the accident when the two black boxes are found.
It's two boxes. One of them records all of the communications on the flight deck. That's what the pilots say to each other, what the pilots say on the radio, all the incoming voice messages from air traffic control. And also you can even hear things like the engine noise. If there was an explosion on board, you would hear that. Then the other box is I suppose you could say the main one, but they're both very important in their own way, is the flight data recorder, which records basically the health of the airplane. It records what the engines are doing. It records the profile of the aircraft's speed, its attitude. It records all sorts of parameters about the airlines, what the airline was doing from minute to minute. And there will be at least half an hour of recording of this, and it may be more, before the time that the accident actually happens. So the authorities will have a great deal of information to work with.
Now let's go over what we know about this tragic plane crash in central Russia so far. A Boeing 737 jet traveling from Moscow to Kazan apparently lost altitude and exploded during its second landing attempt. None of the 50 people on board survived. 2 children and the elder son of Tatarstan's president were among those killed. It was first believed that there were no foreigners on board, but now it has emerged that a British woman died during the crash. The airport will remain closed until noon, and we don't know yet what exactly caused the accident. Investigators are considering poor fuel quality as well as the possibilities of pilot error and inclement weather. They've obtained documents from Tatarstan Air Company and will begin examining them in a few hours. The Boeing 737-500 series aircraft had been in use for 23 years. Tatarstan Air is the 8th airline to fly that particular plane since it came into service.